This is In the Circle on Fast Pitch News.
And we welcome you to the next to last D2 Tuesday of the regular season. Thankfully, that all made sense how I said it, because I had to do a little thinking before I was going to say that. Would have been a little embarrassing if I say all that, realized I messed up, I had to record that entire open from the beginning. Thankfully, I got it right. Victor Anderson with you. It's been a while since we chatted D2 on Tuesdays, so it's the next to last time that we're going to do it in the regular season, and then conference tournaments, and then May the 8th, the Field of 64 gets announced on NCAA.com. We're going to have announcements about our plans on In the Circle about what we're going to be doing about that next week. But this week, 3 conferences in the spotlight, 2 of them getting ready for final weekends of the regular season. 1 with a showdown of top 10 teams that, if you've been listening to our previous episodes, I've been foreshadowing this happening for the next few weeks, and here we are. A conference that has a unique conference tournament format and a potential conference championship series that could have regional ramifications and much, much more. You know where you can find us. You know where you can listen to our podcast. You know where you can follow us on our socials, all that good stuff. Before we get into all of those particulars, we always start on D2 Tuesday talking about the top 25. And we have a unanimous number 1 in our top 25. It is the University of Tampa. Tampa has a chance to clinch the Sunshine State Conference regular season championship this weekend. We'll talk about that series very shortly. Tampa swept Barry by a combined score of 10-2. Their 4th straight sweep in conference play. 7th time for the Spartans in 8 seasons. 23-1 in league play. Received all 16 first place polls in the NFCA poll for their 2nd straight week as the number 1 team in Division II. North Georgia at number 2 in the rankings. Another dominant week for the Nighthawks. They clinched a share of their 8th straight Peach Belt Championship thanks to a series sweep this past weekend. UT Tyler, who just finished knocking off Texas A&M Kingsville earlier Tuesday afternoon, they are number 3. Alabama Huntsville is number 4. Alabama Huntsville clinched the regular season title in the Gulf South and will be the number 1 seed in the conference tournament next week. Big implications there. I will highlight those shortly. Central Oklahoma, the Bronchos number 5. U of Indy number 6. Grand Valley State 7. Rogers State, the defending national champions, come in at 8. Colorado Christian 9, Simona State 10, St. Leo staying at number 11 in spite losing a game to Eckerd leading up to the showdown versus Tampa. Hurts the chances for Aaron Kimberger and company to try and win the Sunshine State Conference. Again, I will highlight the importance of that series very shortly. West Texas A&M number 12. The top 12 that I just read, unchanged from last week. Concordia, Krista Rosendahl and company, they move up a spot to 13. Adelphi, the beast of the East region, they move up a spot to 14. Here comes Mississippi College, ladies and gentlemen, the Lady Choctaws. 4th straight week moving up in the polls. They are now in the top 15. Wingate is at 16. Harding 17. Lenore Ryan 18. Oklahoma Baptist at 19. West Alabama 20. Columbus State co-Peach Belt regular season champions and will have the number 1 seed in the conference tournament. I will talk about that format very shortly. Valdosta State, the Blazers are in a free fall, folks. They dropped from 13 to 22. Valdosta State has lost 6 straight, 7 of the last 9. Valdosta State got swept by Auburn Montgomery. Huge ramifications for the Gulf South tournament that will be coming up next week. Charleston, the Fighting Michelle Frews, the number 23, tied with Lubbock Christian, and Oklahoma Christian re-entering the poll at number 25. Missouri Southern and Wilmington dropping out Missouri Southern and Wilmington naturally are the top teams receiving votes, along with Nova Southeastern, Westchester, and Southern Arkansas. So that's the NFCA Top 25, the next to last regular season poll before the postseason. Players of the Week in Division 2 by Louisville Slugger and Wilson. Offensive Player of the Week, Maya Jones from Bridgeport. Bridgeport trying to make a late push to make to the tournament. Jones went 22 of 32 last week over 8 games for a .688 batting average, 2 home runs, 15 RBIs, 706 on base, 1,000 slugging percentage, had multi-hit games in all but one of the 8 games she played, including 3 4-hit games. In a doubleheader sweep versus Dominican, she went 8 for 10, 2 doubles, 2 home runs, 6 driven in, and also had the game-winning RBI in a win over then number 25 Williamsburg. She leads the CACC with 52 ribbies and also hitting a crisp and robust .432. Pitcher of the Week, Kayla Betts, the dynamic ace for Aaron Kimberger and St. Leo. All she did last week was go 2-0 with the save with a Blutarskian-like ERA of 0.0. And if you don't know what Blutarski is, I really can't help you on that one, folks. 23 strikeouts, 2 walks, and 11 innings of work. Had a 5-inning perfect game in the series opener versus Eckerd. 13 strikeouts, 2 walks. Actually, 5-inning no-hitter. 13 strikeouts in that win versus Eckerd. In that victory there. And if you're St. Leo, you need her to really continue what she's been doing, especially if you want them to get that series win versus Tampa. Game 2, she struck out all 3 times she faced to earn the save. Came in the final game, pitched 5 shutout innings, giving up 4 hits in that particular series. And now, if you're St. Leo, you have Betts, who's 21-2 in the year, a .51 ERA. And she will be leading St. Leo into a huge showdown as St. Leo will take on Eckerd. St. Leo sweeping Eckerd. They won 17-0 on the first game of the series, and then 3-2 and 9-2 in the doubleheader on Saturday. So that sets the stage for St. Leo versus Tampa Friday, Saturday at Vince Naomi Family Stadium. Tampa right now 3 games ahead of the Lions in the conference standings. What does this mean for conference play? If Tampa wins at least 2 games in that series, that guarantees that Tampa will be the regular season champions for the Sunshine State Conference. It will get the automatic bid. Even if Tampa were to lose out, Tampa wins the series, that puts them at 25-3. That puts them at 25-2. If they lose out, that's 25-5. The best St. Leo can finish is 24-6. If you're St. Leo, you are in a must-sweep circumstance. A sweep of Tampa means that you will be tied at 23-4. You have the head-to-head tiebreaker, and that will take you to the final series of the regular season, where you would host your long-standing rival Rollins with a shot to win the conference championship. Tampa finishes their regular season by taking on Lynn in Boca Raton. And it's kind of interesting how Tampa playing Lynn, the final series of the regular season, could have some impact on the conference championship. I go back to 2014. Rollins needed Lynn to knock off Tampa at least 1 game and had to sweep Palm Beach Atlantic to get a share of the regular season championship. The Tars got exactly that, and they were able to get themselves into the NCAA tournament. Tampa can take it all for themselves if they win the series versus St. Leo. And you're going to be dealing with 2 of the most dynamic teams, and not just the Sunshine State Conference, but 2 of the most dynamic teams in all of Division 2. Tampa, number 1 in batting average. They're top 4 in hits. They're second in home run. They're second in home runs. Now this is in conference. Now this is overall. Tampa second in RBIs, number one in on-base percentage, the number one in slugging percentage, and this is on top of their pitching. St. Leo, number one in ERA, number one in shutouts, number one in strikeouts, number one in lowest batting average against. Opponents are only hitting 147 against St. Leo. So you got a dominant pitching staff led by Caleb Betts versus probably the most dynamic offense in all of the Sunshine State Conference in Tampa. Oh, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about Tampa's offense, and rightfully so. St. Leo was number 2 in the conference, hitting .327. St. Leo was number 3 in runs scored behind Nova Southeastern and Tampa, respectively. St. Leo leads the conference in hits. St. Leo is top 5 in the conference in doubles. St. Leo is second behind Tampa in on-base percentage. And St. Leo is 4th in stolen bases with 93. Oh, by the way, Tampa's pitching staff, I talk about the Tampa offense. The Tampa pitching staff, you're wondering if they dropped off? Nope. 1.43 ERA, which is third best in the league behind St. Leo and Barry. Opponent batting average against .209, third best in the conference behind St. Leo and Barry. It's going to be a fun series to follow. If not for the fact that I had another broadcasting assignment taking place this weekend, I would be in Tampa to watch that series and find out who will be taking home the Sunshine State Conference Championship. Because Tampa, with the win, they are assured of at least getting a share of the conference title. If they win the series, they get all for themselves. Which means for Tampa, they get the automatic bid to the NCAA tournament that goes along with it, since the Sunshine State Conference still, for whatever reason, does not have a conference tournament. I'm going to need to have somebody in leadership explain this to me like I'm 7, why your conference does not feel the need to have a conference tournament, because it can help teams like Embry-Riddle, it can help teams like Rollins, it can help teams like Florida Tech, those teams that are flirting being outside of that top 7 in the South region, and can maybe make a tournament run to get a last-minute boost to their resume. Now, I know what you're saying. Vic, the top 8 teams in the region make it. Yes. However, if a team outside of the top 8 wins the automatic bid for their conference, they will be granted entry into the regional tournament. The South, the SIAC champion, that's the SIAC, Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, that's a conference made up of HBCUs, they traditionally get that number 8 seed. So you want to be inside the top 7 come Selection Monday, because if you're on that 8 line, you're likely going to be on the outside looking in. Now, speaking of Nova Southeastern, Florida Tech, Embry-Riddle, Nova Southeastern, they're 16-8. Their position is pretty secure. Now, when the regional quote-unquote listings, a.k.a. rankings, came out last Wednesday, and I talked about this with Eric on our episode of In the Circle last week, Nova Southeastern was one of the teams under consideration. Trust me, ladies and gentlemen, when the actual rankings do come out Wednesday afternoon, I will have thoughts about that on Thursday's episode. Now, for those of you who missed Thursday's episode, I will quickly talk about the teams that are under consideration in the South. You have Alabama Huntsville, Auburn Montgomery, Embry-Riddle, Florida Tech, Mississippi College, Nova Southeastern, St. Leo, Tampa, Valdosta State, West Alabama. 3 of these 7 teams will not make the South Regional Tournament. I feel confident right now in saying Alabama Huntsville's a lock, could potentially be the number one overall seed in the South, depending on what happens with Tampa and St. Leo. I feel Mississippi College is a lock. I feel Nova Southeastern is a lock. St. Leo is a lock. Tampa's a lock. That's 5. Valdosta State, kinda a lock, but they're slipping right now. So it'll be Valdosta State, West Alabama, Embry-Riddle, Florida Tech, all jockeying for position, and also Auburn-Montgomery, which leads me to talking about the Gulf South. They're in the final weekend of the regular season right now. Alabama Huntsville, as I stated previously, they clinched the #1 overall seed for the Gulf South tournament that will be taking place next week in Alabama. That is a double elimination affair. Mississippi College is a half game up on Auburn-Montgomery. Mississippi College 21-6, Auburn-Montgomery 20-6, and the Lady Choctaws have the head-to-head as they took 2 out of 3 over AUM to start the month in Clifton. Mississippi College ends the regular season with a 3-game series versus Delta State. Auburn-Montgomery, they're a half game ahead of West Alabama. So if they get a little help from the Lady Statesmen, Delta State knocking on Mississippi College, and AUM can knock off Alabama Huntsville at Charger Park, which is going to be no small task, they can find themselves on the 2 line in the Gulf South tournament. West Alabama, they're a full game back of Mississippi College in terms of the Gulf South and the 2 seed. But again, similar to Auburn-Montgomery, West Alabama lost the series. Actually got swept by the Lady Choctaws back in mid-March. So West Alabama's going to have to finish ahead of Mississippi College in the standings if they want to get to at least the 2 seed. And looking at the schedule, they won the series versus Auburn-Montgomery. So that 2 versus 4 could be very, very fluid. Valdosta State, they are on a free fall. We mentioned they've lost 6 straight. They lost 7 out of 9. They got swept by Auburn-Montgomery last weekend. But now, in their defense, they did play at Alabama Huntsville, got swept there. Got played Auburn-Montgomery, swept there. Did take 2 out of 3 versus West Alabama, which was very important because they had the head-to-head of West Alabama should fall this final weekend. They end this regular season at home versus West Florida. Now, how the Gulf South Conference tournaments will work, you have 1 versus 8, 4 versus 5, 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6. Double elimination format, winner gets the automatic bid. Right now, 5 spots are already clinched. UAH, Mississippi College, Auburn-Montgomery, West Alabama, Valdosta State. Those are the teams right now in the South that were being under consideration for the regional rankings. Everyone else will need to, 1, make the tournament, and 2, have to win the tournament to get the automatic bid. Not saying that it can't happen, but given the strength of those 5 teams in the Gulf South, a lot easier said than done. But we'll definitely keep you posted and give you full details about the Gulf South next weekend. Now we get to the Peach Belt. The Peach Belt will start their conference tournament this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And how they do it is a little different, and it's unique. I like it. So this weekend will be a 4-team double elimination format. The top 2 seeds will host. Now with the conference standings, North Georgia and Columbus State both went 24-3. But because Columbus State took 2 out of 3 versus North Georgia on the road, the Cougars are the #1 seed. North Georgia, despite being the #2 ranked team in the nation, are the #2 seed. So Columbus State will host Lander, Flagler, and Young Harris. Columbus State will start the tournament versus Young Harris, and Lander will take on Flagler, double elimination format. North Georgia, as the 2 seed, will entertain Georgia Southwestern, Georgia College, and USC Aiken. The 2 schools that survive will play next weekend for a best-of-3 championship series. Now, this is why I brought up Columbus State getting the #1 seed. Because if the seeds hold serve and Columbus State takes on North Georgia for the Peach Belt Conference Championship, that best-of-3 series, Columbus State, with their school record 86 home runs, will be serving as the host versus the Nighthawks. And I'm just going to say this right now, folks. Not knowing how the regional rankings will break out when they are eventually released Wednesday afternoon. If they're released in actual freaking listings. I mean, if that actually happens, I'm just going to freaking scream. If Columbus State beats North Georgia in that series, that will be 4 wins in 6 games against the number 2 ranked team in the nation. And I would think might be more than enough to be the number 1 seed in the Southeast region. We will have to see if that's going to be the case. Now, one thing that North Georgia does have in their favor, they have the number 2 RPI in the Southeast region as of last week. Wingate is number 1. Columbus State, their RPI in the region is number 5. Columbus State 15-9 versus teams above 500. North Georgia 15-4. Now, Columbus State does have advantage in the strength of schedule. Columbus State has a 539 strength of schedule. North Georgia with a 505 strength of schedule. But if it's that close between 2 teams, you have to give the credence to head-to-head. So if North Georgia plays Columbus State and they lose that Peach Belt Championship Series, the Nighthawks could be in possible trouble in terms of being the number 1 seed. And depending on what happens with Wingate in the SAC, it's a lot of fluid. I feel North Georgia will be playing to be the number 1 seed in the Southeast region. Columbus State, they're playing the host, in my honest opinion. Because right now, for me, and I'll talk about this more when the rankings come out on Wednesday night, I have North Georgia, Columbus State, and then Wingate, 1, 2, 3 in the Southeast. That can all change. We'll have to see what happens with the Southeast region. So that's going to put a bow on our D2 Tuesday for today. Not the usual length that we like to go, but here's what's going to happen. Listen to Thursday's podcast. Eric is going to grill me about the regional rankings. I swear, if these regional rankings are just listings again in terms of teams that are being considered and are listed in alphabetical order, I'm literally going to scream so loud that the neighbors upstairs are going to hear me. And quite frankly, I really don't care that they hear me because I need the world to know how frustrated and ticked off I would be about that circumstance. And I will give you series in each region to look forward to in my recap of the regional rankings. Of course, you heard this one about the South on D2 Tuesday with Tampa and St. Leo, 2 schools that I'm very, very familiar with. Then, next Tuesday, we will do the same thing again. I will talk about all 8 regions, talk about the conference tournaments that will be taking place, putting a bow on the series and the conferences that we talked about today, and then get you ready for the final week of Division 2. And then, ladies and gentlemen, you know, y'all been so loyal to us. You've been so good to us. I'm just going to tell y'all right now, get it out the way. Mark your calendars. Monday, May the 8th, 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central, 6:30 California time. Eric Lopez and I will be going live with our Division 2 selection show watch-along. You will get my final thoughts on who I think will be the top ranked, who will be the teams I'll be hosting, and you will get my instant reaction of the field of 64. What teams were in, what teams were out, which teams will be seated where. And we may post a link of the one we had last year to kind of give you how everything's going to be flowing with that Division 2 selection show watch along. So again, ladies and gentlemen, Monday, May the 8th, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central. Mark your calendars. Govern yourselves accordingly. Our Division 2 selection show watch along. Eric Lopez, myself, We may have a few guests. We may have some surprises for you. Who knows? It's going to be an exciting Monday as the road to Chattanooga will officially be on the way on that Monday morning. But that's going to do it for today's edition of D2 Tuesday. We thank you so much for your support, for your listenership. Tell a friend, tell 10 friends. And we're going to be keeping this thing going. Got one more D2 Tuesday in the regular season. And then postseason time and the road to Chattanooga. So we will talk to you next week. I'm Victor Anderson. Hope you've enjoyed this edition of D2 Tuesday here on our Inner Circle YouTube channel. Good night, Canada.